Good morning from Chico. Today is the 18th day of October, a Friday, and the reason I look like this is because I just woke up. It's still dark outside. What a beautiful sky. Oh my goodness. When I put the cat's tuna outside for her to eat, she slept with me last night, so I'm in a very good, healthy state. You can tell by my eyes. No, look up here. That's what you need to look at. That's really a better part of me right now. I know I don't look good, but looking good is not the most important thing in the world. I have some material here we're going to go through real quickly, just so you know. I'm still on track, but I wanted to give you a little perspective on this. I just have been digging around for my old notes. Almost a year ago, this is from the 31st of December 2023. So this was my New Year's. Why don't you just see the title? Yeah, I've been working on this for well over 3 years. Although it was 3 years ago I made the discovery I'm about to publish. That's what this is all about. And hyperspheric geometry, what's in here? Well, a whole bunch of my stuff about hyperspheric. Why hyperspheric? That came later. That was one of the later discoveries. This has been a sequence of discoveries, which has really been exciting, I must say. I don't really mind if I never get heard, but I do have to try. So this is what I wrote up the other day, just really quickly, just trying to organize my thoughts. And you see I have some of my own notation, which may not fully make sense, though, over there in the right column. I just want to read through this. I'm considering now my LaTeX document, and I have several outlines lying around the house and in various compartments. But in putting it all together, what I'm always looking for is a synthetic sequence. Now in print, it's like email. You don't want to rant in email. You don't want to say anything in email that you don't want to have remembered forever. You don't always... Oh, you don't want to do that, but anyway. This first category, it just came to me the other day when I wrote this up. Errors in the development of the linear number system. I did uncover several errors in basic arithmetic that have been taught forever. It's just considered to be part of the litany now. But have you ever considered the Euclidean null point? This is the basis of rational logical science today, minus my discovery. That the linear number system began with Euclid's very first sentence because he began axiomatically. What he was doing was synthesizing the knowledge of his time. But the way he did it made him immortal because he came up with the axiom theorem postulate system. It's a method of proof that's so highly respected today that a lot of American scientists believe that that's God instead of the designer. And they talk about, where do numbers come from? Do they come from the pixies? And they're absolutely serious, because that takes the place of spirituality. Oh, I didn't spend 30 years studying the Bible just to become a superstitious outcast freak. No, that's very worthwhile study. Although you have to study it by yourself. I, as most Americans of my generation who still went to church, made the mistake of joining a church. Always a mistake. You never want to join an organization of humans because you'll be entrapped. It's no coincidence that there's always a plate being passed around. Oh, the church needs money. Oh, God, we need more of your money. Well, God says you need to give us at least 10%, but you're always free to give more. Oh, they will never stop talking about money in a church. Same in a political organization, by the way. Barack Obama gets on the air. He's on the air right now. Trump is on the air. $5. That's all. That can make the difference. Yeah, $5 can make the difference. Donald Trump is an absolute idiot. But he's smart in the ways of the world to get money. It's always about money. That's why people go into science now in America. It's not to find the truth. It's not to make themselves better men. It's to get money, for God's sake. Money! All right. So the null point of Euclid is the source of all of the modern errors. Just that first sentence in the book that takes the place of the Bible. For stupid Americans, yeah. Because Americans, I mean, you don't, I'm just blaming a statistic. I am an American. Oh, God, I went through the whole thing. When I look back on my religious, I was never a fanatic in the sense of pestering people. And I never gave a penny to any of the 6 or 7 churches that I attended regularly. At one time, I was going to church on Saturday and Sunday because I considered myself a Seventh-day Adventist. And he's a cultist. Yeah, but I didn't have anything to do with their religion. I really don't know how they finally sent me as a missionary to Ukraine. And I had never really studied their prophetesses. If you don't know anything about the Seventh-day Adventists, they have a satanic prophetess. You can't have a prophetess and still be a Christian church. She actually got a bump on the head, and nobody knows where she got her ideas, but she was worshipped in place of a real prophet. Now in Islam, it's a little different because their prophet is obviously accredited because he led his team to conquer, first of all, the people of Saudi Arabia, who were basically worshiping demons, and he converted them to Allah, or he killed them. And that's one way to get something done. Now, the methodology used here on earth, I don't know how heaven can condone, conquering. But if you read the book of the Apocalypse, the last transmission from heaven, if you're a Christian or an Islam person, you cannot include the Jews, obviously, in anything, because they've been rejected completely as a nation. Now, it's written clearly in Scripture for you so-called anti-Semites, and I've never actually met one, but I've heard of anti-Semitism. Now, of course, that's a major point of propaganda for the Israeli team, the Zionists. But as for the Jews being damned like Hitler was in any way right, of course not. It makes no sense at all. Or there would be no God. There would be no fairness. No, you've got to finally get rational. This universe makes enough sense, just the way it's constructed, that you can figure out that there's a designer. But we covered that in other videos. Let's go on with this. So the null point. How did Euclid define the point? And why did he start with a point? Well, it's a dimensionless point. Just translating from the Greek to modern terms, a null point? That's what he started with. A point is that which has neither breadth, width, length, nor any dimension. That's called null. Null, some people pronounce it, or nil in the British Isles. I'm fairly certain that I said that accurately. But what is it? It's an amazing concept because the thing being defined is an anti-thing. It's a placeholder for an abstract idea, but when you take it seriously, it doesn't work if you take it too seriously, because it turns out that is 0 in the number system. So that's pretty basic. I think you realize that 0 is the representation of Euclid's null point. It's the balance point of a doubly open line. Now the universe, the way we actually use that line to measure the universe, you don't use a double open line, which means it goes to 2 infinities. Why? Because one of the directions is negative. Well, that doesn't make any sense in terms of distance, which is the only metric for the line. So we got a null. See, zero was not in Euclid's mind. He wasn't thinking of the number zero, which technically had not been invented. Nobody had a cipher for zero. It was only positive numbers. In fact, the negative numbers had not been invented either in the time of Euclid. So the null point is something that is quite specific to his axiomatic sequence, which ended up with a definition of distance. Perfect. He did it perfectly. That's why he's worshipped in the place of the designer. Like Euclid thought it up. Well, he thought it up because it already existed to be thought up. This is where modern American scientists, I just use Americans because they're supposedly at the cutting edge. I believe that's true technologically. But in terms of wisdom, the Americans are at the bottom of the shit pile. You won't find a wise American. And instead of that, you get Elon Musk, who's basically Satan's representative to America. And he's up for a Nobel Prize now, so everything is spun so completely out of control. There's no recovery. I'm here to give honest seekers a chance because, hey, the best game in town hasn't gone away. It's just that your attention has been completely redirected, so you'll never get back on track. So, but we're dealing with science here. You can see there is an overlap. There is when you're talking about the origin of the universe. There's going to be an overlap because of the nature of the question. All right, well, the null point is a fatal flaw in the number system. Our number system is provisional. It's been provisional for about 3,000 years. And it's developed the whole time. Even as late as the 19th century, changes were still being made to the linear number system to adjust it for the Industrial Revolution, because sphericity was being encountered for the first time in human history. The sphere became real. We didn't know that the universe is spherical until the 20th century. We didn't know why the Earth is spherical. We had no idea why the Sun is spherical. So everybody ignored it. They concentrated on the orbits of the planets, which could be measured. But as for sphericity itself, nobody ever understood even the phases of the moon. Because it's spherical geometry. We have no number system for that. The entire universe is nonlinear. So you see, this linear number system is the problem. Well, I discovered the secret to bury Euclid. You see, it's superpositional, so it's very easy to get confused. Because it does seem like the number system itself must be divine in place of a rational creator. It's just these numbers that just appeared out of the dirt. And Euclid just got the ball rolling to make a big mud ball. And then humans pat themselves on the back. They feel better about themselves. They don't need to worry about fate, destiny, afterlife, divinity, supernaturality, because they have it all in their numbers. Because numbers get you money. Numbers get you money. You'll never find a mathematician who does it just for fun. There are such people, such as John Horton Conway. He's kind of like me. He didn't really care about money because he had something better to work on. So even though he died of the COVID virus 4 years ago, I believe he died happy. He seemed happy to me. He was a very well-loved man. We all miss him. But he also discovered, finally, the very first definition of the linear number system. Now, recently I have been reviewing his discoveries, which are of immense importance to me, and his name will be in the LaTeX document because of his surreal binary number tree. We're getting there. All right, the negative numbers. That's a distinct problem. 0, which is not the same as the null point. The null point is a geometric abstraction. The negative numbers are, you could say that's a geometric necessity, if you have a 0 and a double open line, well, then you have negative numbers. It's balanced, you see. That's called the Archimedean balance of the object. All right, number 4, projective geometry. You know what projective geometry is? It's when you make a point at infinity. So that's nonsensical. It makes no sense. But you can use these abstractions to construct. What you're doing is creating geometric constructions the wrong way. And the calculus is one of those tools that was developed to do things ass backwards. For the sake of technology. That's the only reason the calculus exists. All right. Projective and other geometries is how I have that classed. We don't have any geometry. Geometry has never been developed. We have a derivative form of geometry called trigonometry, which is what you do with straight lines. That's why when you try to study the sphere, you're going to find spherical trigonometry. Trig means linear numbers. Linear numbers for curvature. You've got to think about that. You really have to give that some serious thought. Get out your compass and straight edge and sit down with a blank pad of paper about this size. Let's get a look at this. Yeah, it's pretty big, right? Well, that's very good for your mind to have a big piece of paper to just work out. You know, what does our geometry actually accomplish? Well, when you start to get to the edges, such as the infinitesimal, which is the atom and what's inside, or you get to the edge where it turns into spatial infinity, you lose your way because you can't compute the curvature. You can't compute the curvature of the quantum. I can because I learned it from Roger Boschkovich. You will actually see the algebraic curve that goes through the quantum, which can be computed. It's the wave function. Because the wave function is a linearization of a spheric function. And the only way it can be perceived at all is if you have a solid basis, pardon the pun, you have a solid basis in geometry. None of your scientists know geometry at all. They don't know geometry. So they're insane. By rational scientific, you're using a square peg to try to compute with a square peg a round hole. It's proverbial. Well, that's your linear number system. It's a cubic peg for a spheric answer. You're not going to get it. That's why calculus and complex numbers were developed. Well, those are signs of disease. All right. So then the next one down, infinite exhaustion. This was known to Archimedes and the Greeks. They used a form of calculus. That's how they were able to home in on the true nature of pi, which they quickly realized was irrational, which was traumatic. And so they gave up on curvature because it reduces to an irrational relationship between a curved line, the circle, and a very peculiar line, a line with no curvature. The definition of a straight line is it's an exception to a universal rule. Because the universe, although there are linear features to the universe, such as the double lightsaber that comes out of a DRAGN, a double radio-lobed active galactic nucleus shoots out two superluminal jets of light in opposite directions, and those are linear jets. Also, the universe itself, at its highest structural level, is polyhedral, because the superclusters around the turn of the millennium were finally confirmed to not be independent units. The clusters of galaxies are the last independent unit of luminous objects, which is stars. It goes stars, composed into galaxies, composed into clusters. Those are the three primary levels of cosmic structure, but there's more structure beyond that, and we haven't discovered it all yet. But at the highest level, going all the way out to what we measure to be the CMBR, which is problematical, we'll come back to that. But the structure is actually nexal points with strands connecting the nexal points which are linear. So at the highest level, the universe is polyhedral. You'll never find that written anywhere or discussed at all, because it contradicts every form of cosmology. There is no cosmology. That is a science of superstition. So the book by Peebles, which I guess got him virtually a Nobel Prize for his work in cosmology, all those cosmologists are distraction artists, so that you'll never actually look at the real universe. Through the photographs and measurements, we have a ton of data and knowledge. This simply is undigested. Instead, the wonderful human race, in the form of its modern scientists, beginning with Einstein, leapfrogged over literally a universe of data and started computing the universe itself based on just two known facts. One is the nature of gravity. That's where all of these insanity ideas come from, is from measuring the universe only in terms of gravity. Well, that is so close to being clinical psychosis that it's just definitional. Again, you're trying to shove a square peg into a round hole, the sign of a monkey that can't learn. So let's go on. What I'm saying about these other geometries, they're not geometries. Also, Lobachevsky, Bolyai, and Gauss did not discover non-Euclidean geometries, pure Euclidean. The tesseract, the 4D cube, the hypercube, they invented in the 19th century. The mathematicians extrapolated you can have hypercubic space. Well, that's Einstein's field equation is based in that nonsensical notion. You're now using hypercubic space, and they say that space-time is curved. They're lying. No, it's not. It's hypercubic. It's the calculus and the hypercomplexity that's invested in the mathematics that produces artificial curvature. Well, I discovered the actual formula for curvature, which, okay, let's go on. Now, the calculus translator. You know, we're all taught calculus is the be-all and end-all of mathematics. No, it's the defeat of mathematics. The reason Newton invented the calculus, and we would have to turn to Leibniz and ask him his reason. I did study that, so did Boschkovich. Why was the calculus needed? Because he was trying to compute an elliptical orbit, which essentially is just a stretched circle. So it's really a circular orbit, and he was trying to compute that better than Kepler. Well, he succeeded with the calculus. Why? Because he was trying to get at another number system, and he was too dumb to figure it out. He never made the real leapfrog is over your misconceptions. You don't want to leapfrog to the edge of the universe without studying the structure of what's in the universe. That's ass backwards. Well, that's your modern cosmologist. But let's go on. I think you understand the calculus is part of a very advanced self-deception system. If you're using the calculus, you lost. You're a technologist. You're part of the industry. Nobody studies calculus on their own. Now, Newton, of course, did. So there's exceptions to these kinds of statements. And then the complex numbers. Shortly, I hope to give a full presentation on the complex number system. Paul Dirac, considered to be at the apex of the quantum mechanist logician tree, he's the one who saw furthest. We know that because of his equation. The Dirac equation extends the complex number system to a special form of complexity which is doubly complex, and that's called a spinor. Sir Roger Penrose was so taken with that construction because it does have validity under the linear number delusional system. that you're still trying to get answers by tweaking the linear system. That's all the mathematicians can do now. They'll never get out of that labyrinth. But that's why I'm producing this paper. Now, the advantages of the spherical number system, and we'll close off before half an hour with this. There is no zero because the actual number system that the universe uses is based on an Archimedean of unity, not nullity. So the linear number system is constrained to a zero-based system, which means that your frame of reference is null. And that is the basis of the EFE. The general relativity is not general. General relativity simply advances the notion of the computation of velocity to the computation of acceleration in a closed volume. Well, you have to have a frame of reference for your closed volume. In the light cone, that's the apex of the cone, is 0, 0, 0, 0. That's where you are. That is the frame of reference in that geometricization of the Einstein field equation, because it does have a geometry. It's pseudo-hyperbolic space because nobody knows how to compose curvature. You have to derive curvature. Well, I inverted that so that you begin with rational curvature and derive the linearity. That's the correct. See, but nobody saw that. Nobody's ever seen that. I'm the first man to notice that. It's really quite complex, but it's not complicated. It's remarkably simple. There's no infinity. Taking a rational approach to the parameterization of the sphere, as I did, I was then able, by opening up that portal of visibility to get at curvature, I was then able to rationalize infinity. And there are two infinities that must be rationalized, and if there were not two infinities, it could not be rationalized. But it can be on a force balance between the center and the edge, and that does define the universe. So I got it. I got the first cosmology of all time. So this is quite deep. There is no zero, there is no infinity in the spherical number system. This gets rid of all the problems, you see. There are no negative numbers. All distances are positive. All measurements are positive. The negative numbers are an artifact of the derivative number system. You can't use negative numbers. Although I'll show you where the concept of plus and minus on the line, that does get transferred to the sphere, but instead of it being polaric, 180 degrees, the relationship is orthogonal. And that was one of my later discoveries. As after about a year of producing on YouTube, that came to me because of Ruger Bošković. He gave me the key to the universe. It can't be done without the right number system. Nobody can get anywhere. So there are also no irrational numbers. That's miraculous, and I won't elaborate. Two componency is the key to everything in numbers. And the wavelength frequency relationship, 1 to 2 and 2 to 1, in reciprocal relationship, which is orthogonal, I proved that, that is on a closed surface. And nobody's seen that. And that solves the problem of light propagation and the definition of the quantum, as I'll be showing you in the document, which you're waiting to see. It'll be about a week or two. And I'll broadcast quite loudly where you can read it before publishing it. In a few days, see if anyone, I doubt anyone will look. If you do, God bless you, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Please keep up, because you won't go unrewarded. That's for dead certain. All right, the two componency gives us integrated, or I should say integrative, or integrated complexity. I discovered the true meaning of geometric imaginary space. It's quite natural, but you indeed cannot see it. But it's physically real. And I can be more specific. From our perceptual perspective, and we are limited, let's face it, the eyes are in the front of our head. We don't have a sphere of eyes. So we are designed to begin with linearity. So we're doing things right, but you're supposed to then advance at some point to sphericity. And I'm the man, I'm the second Euclid. I'm also the second Einstein. Well, you see, I've gotten past the block. And then you get out of two componency not only integrative complexity, but the greatest gift of all, which the Greeks were onto, is called proportionality. Now we have two misleading terms for proportionality. Proportionality, you know, is the relationship between two numbers on a proportion. That two could be said to be related to one on a factor, correct? That's true in multiplicative space. But one related to two is the conjugate, and they're not polar. 1/2 is perpendicular to 2 over 1. These are fractions. That's called division. Never call it that again. There's no dividing at all. It's quite the contrary. It's synthetic. Proportional numbers are spherical numbers. That's a secret of the universe. So we replace polarity with orthogonality, and that unlocks physics at both ends. It solves the electromagnetic gravity relation problem. So I did get the grand unification theory, the theory of everything, and the unified field theory, and much more. Which is miraculous. I think you'd have to agree if I can prove it. I have proved it, but now someone has to acknowledge that I proved it. Can't get around that. We've replaced addition, which is a derivative operator, with proportionality, which we were taught was multiplication and division. Incorrect. Incorrect. Division is the wrong word, and multiplication is simply the inverse of proportionality. That's extremely deep arithmetically and reveals the psychosis at the foundation of our number system. So these mathematicians who worship numbers are worshiping a golden calf. Oh, it goes all the way, and that's why I keep introducing religious notes. Because you're going to have to face that, and I'm giving you a head start for the hardest problem you'll ever face. How to apply the truth to your own life. If you don't have the right logical system to begin with, I'm sorry, you're going to drown. They are drowning. So all of these advantages of the spherical number system finally lead to the correct dynamic system to describe the universe from the inside out, which is the only way to describe the universe. So this is the beginning of cosmology. I'm the first rational cosmologist. And yes, I have all the answers. It's not I, you see, because I got this directly from the universe. This is the universe giving you the crib sheet for your exam questions. I'm giving you everything. I don't ask for money, so you know there are no loopholes, unless I have psychological problems. Well, sometimes a man doesn't know he has psychological problems. I could be experiencing an LSD flashback. This is working wonders for me, but for you, you may be dubious. Well, that's called being a scientist. So you're going to read my paper, aren't you? Please read it and leave a comment if you feel like it. All right, so that's enough. That's a half an hour. Thank you for tuning in. It's early in the morning. It's cool. We had some rain. Now there's a beautiful full moon. I just saw Orion. The stars looked like apples. I was in transcendental bliss, but not quite awake, and I don't think I even look awake. So thank you for tuning in. I'll produce a lecture a day no matter what, because I learned something from each one of my presentations. Virtually. Maybe not every single one. Certainly not in the start, the first 100 of my videos back in 2022. About half the time I was inebriated on beer. Because I'm human. I'm human. No, if you get the solution, it's wonderful to be human. Otherwise, it's literally hell. Keep looking up. We'll be right back.